everybody. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this special afternoon presentation. My name is Alana Blumenthal. I'm the director of the Brigham City Museum, and we are so proud to be hosting this program today. Our exhibit, Uncovering the Journey, Japanese American Pioneers in Box Elder County, is open through June 21st, and we worked really hard to make it a community story. So we start with the earliest pioneers around 1900, but we also tell lots of stories up to and including the civic community that is active in our state today. So I could not be happier to welcome some of the representatives of that civic community and let them talk a little bit about the history behind what they're doing and what they're advocating for. So with that, I will let them introduce themselves. I just want to thank everybody for being here today, especially our presenters.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm Clarysa Park. So I am I'm on the board member of the Salt Lake JC. I'm on the board for the Salt Lake JCL, and I run the Instagram and website for SLC Japantown. And when Riley reached out to do a presentation, I thought it'd be really cool to share from the Yonsei, the fourth generation perspective of what it's like being a Japanese American in Utah from the past, present, and future. So this is Kelly Asao, and she's from the Salt Lake JCL, and she'll be sharing about the Japanese American Citizens League. And Alex Hirai will be taking us back in time to share the past and history of the Japanese community. So go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so like Clarissa said, my name's Alex Hirai. I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah. But we grew up going to like the Ogden Buddhist Church. So I kind of have like a connection in that way to this area. So yeah. I'll start. So the first Japanese to visit Utah were a group of 107 officials and students. This group was known as the Iwakara delegation. And so prior to that, there was a delegation that came to the United States in 1860. But they just went from San Francisco down to the Panama, and I don't think the Panama Canal had been built yet, but they went across the land bridge right there and then straight to New York. So other than San Francisco, they didn't visit anywhere in the Western United States. But in 1872, so 3 years after the Transcontinental Railroad had been built, they were coming through from San Francisco and they were going straight to Washington, D.C. But they got stopped in Utah because of a snowstorm. And so in Ogden, they were switching trains and they got stuck in a snowstorm. So for 3 weeks, they made an unplanned stop in Salt Lake City. And so, so at the time, Utah was a frontier town. And so there's only like 20,000 people or so living in Salt Lake City. So it was kind of a cultural clash because it was like, the elites of Japan visiting, and they were supposed to just go from San Francisco to DC. And so they stop in Utah. And so it's kind of an interesting cultural clash. They're coming from a country of 35 million people and they stop in Salt Lake City. And so, so Japanese officials were coming to learn about, the United States. And so they took a lot from that meeting, and, it kind of set the stage for the immigration of Japanese American or Japanese folks to settle here. And so, about a decade later, the first Japanese came to Utah. And so a majority came to work on railroad section gangs. And so they were helping build the so when the first Japanese came, they replaced Chinese workers who the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. So in order to replace that labor, they brought in a lot of Japanese Americans because they were seen as like desirable, cheap labor. So Yeah, in 1890, there were 107,488 Chinese people or Chinese in the United States and around 2,000 Japanese. But by 1910, it evened out. And so there was around 71,000 Chinese and 71,000 Japanese in the United States. So one of the big reasons, or so a lot of them came to work on railroad section gangs, but in Japan, a lot of, farming is seen as like a very like noble thing to do. And so a lot of Japanese folks brought farming techniques. And so as soon as they could get off of railroad section gangs, they would try and join or buy land to farm or like work as labor contractors until they could buy their own farms. Um, but that's why a lot of Japanese came from California to Utah, is because they face a lot of discrimination. There was a lot of like land laws being passed in California. So even if you could make enough money to buy or rent property, you would get, excluded, or the government would take it away or stuff like that. And so, um, yeah. So by the turn of the century, around 1907, there was a growing community in Salt Lake City. And so it was it wasn't officially called Japantown until much later, but these Japanese towns would start to be settled, and the biggest one was in Salt Lake City, and it was, yeah, the bounds of it were from Fourth West, or no, Seventh West to about State Street, and then South Temple to about Third South. So yeah, right in the heart of Salt Lake City, and so it became the place where, not just for Salt Lake City JAs, but people from or JAs from across the state would come and gather, and it would be a place where, people could be like in an in group, as opposed to most places they were like the minority. So um yeah, the picture in the top right is of E.D. Hashimoto, and he started a labor company, and so he was responsible for like helping a lot of the people coming from California to come and work on railroad section gangs, and then also just in general getting people into like employment that they could take advantage of. Um, and so yeah, Salt Lake City, Japantown steadily rose until the Japanese Exclusion Act of 1924. And so this was very similar to the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. It just like stopped immigration well, it didn't completely stop it, people would find ways to get on to the United States, but officially Japanese Americans were not allowed to move into the United States. So yeah, so that kind of leads into the Japanese American incarceration experience. And so after Pearl Harbor in December of 1941, Japanese Americans were relocated across the United States. And so there was one in Utah, and it was about 50 miles outside of Delta, Utah. And so this is where, well, so a lot of like my family was in Topaz, and so that's a big reason why like I live in Utah now. But there was a lot of voluntary movement to kind of avoid it, to get to the United States or to get to Utah from California. So during this time, the Japanese American population in Utah tripled from what it was before. And just in Salt Lake City, that's not counting just Topaz. And so um, there was a lot of like, I think Kelly will talk about it, but like the Salt Lake JCL was headquartered in Salt Lake City during wartime. And then a lot of Japanese American organizations that were based in California moved to Utah at the time. So um, yeah, and then in 1988, there was a official apology and acknowledgement of the injustices of incarceration. So yeah, and so like I said, many fled incarceration and moved to Utah during that time, and then also like after, obviously a lot of people resettled in Salt Lake City just because it was a lot easier. And then during the war there was a lot of like, oh, sorry, yeah. So like I said, Salt Lake City became an important center for Japanese American activity, and then a lot of people would come and work on farms in northern Utah, even during incarceration. And so they would have like work release. And so that's why a lot of folks moved up here, is to come farm. Yeah, and so after the war, Japantown and Salt Lake City became like the main gathering place for JAs. And so yeah, up until 1968 is when the Salt Palace was built. And yeah, it took away a lot of the businesses that were right there, like through eminent domain. They took a lot of the like physical properties that were a part of Japantown. And so, you know, a lot of those businesses tried to move, and a lot of them, or I think, yeah, some of them were able to keep going on for a while, but I think the JSO Credit Union and Sage Farm Market are the only businesses still operating that were on that street. Um, and so, yeah, that's kind of where things stand in today. And so this is like the original area of Japantown. And so, yeah. So I think, yeah, that's kind of it for me. And so I'll pass it on to Kelly, talk about JSL.
Hey everyone, and please feel free to ask us questions at the end. We're gonna have some time, so if you have any questions, you can like ask any one of us. So I'm Kelly Asao. In my like day job, I teach at Westminster University, and I'm a professor of psychology over there. And I specialize in culture, gender, and sexuality. And then in my free time, I'm the president of the Salt Lake chapter of the Japanese American Citizens League. I'll refer to that as the JACL, so you'll hear that again and again. And I'm also the Intermountain District Governor for JACL, so I sit on the national board for the organization. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Japanese American Citizens League, what we do, what we stand for, and then again, if you have any questions at the end, feel free to ask me. So the Japanese American Citizens League, or JACL, is the oldest AAPI civil rights group in the nation. It was actually founded in 1929 in response to some of those anti-Asian, the rising anti-Asian sentiment, and also the land laws and the other laws and regulations that were passed specifically to target and exclude Japanese Americans and Asian Americans during that time. So the Japanese American Citizens League is a national organization. We have chapters all around the country whose mission is to secure and safeguard the civil and human rights of Asian and Pacific Islander Americans and all communities who are subjected to injustice and bigotry. The leaders and members of JACL also work to promote and preserve the cultural heritage and legacy of the Japanese American community. So we engage in one like prong, there's like two-prong approach to what JACL does. And one big prong of that is the civil rights portion. And so what we do is, as the oldest and largest AAPI civil rights organization, we do a lot of advocacy. And as Alex mentioned, we are very active in Utah. So some people are surprised by that. They're like, what, JACL in Utah? And because of that history, because of Topaz and the resettlement that happened of Japanese Americans after Topaz, and also because of the influx of Japanese Americans and Japanese that moved to Utah, fleeing the Executive Order 9066 and the forced removal, a lot of people resettled to Utah. And so there actually has been and continues to be a thriving Japanese American and Japanese community here in Utah. As Alex mentioned, in fact, in 1942, during incarceration, the national headquarters of the Japanese American Citizens League relocated to Salt Lake City, and the JACL Credit Union, which is one of the two remaining businesses from Japantown, was founded as a way to help Japanese Americans resettle after their incarceration was over. And so we still have this kind of powerful presence in the community here. What we do is Locally, there are 3 chapters of this national organization. There's Salt Lake City, there's Mount Olympus, which Mount Olympus is another one, and then there's Wasatch Front North, which is what Alex is a part of. Every year we take turns to do these big events. So you should recognize the first picture in the upper left over there. That is the Day of Remembrance celebration. And the 3 chapters take turns hosting and organizing that big event, which just preserves the history so that we never forget the injustice that was inflicted upon the Japanese Americans when it comes to forced removal and incarceration. So I was honoring, February 19th is honoring that and like memorializing the signing of Executive Order 9066 that forced Japanese Americans on the West Coast to leave their homes, leave everything behind, their property, their land, their businesses, and then relocate them forcibly to these camps. So we honor the struggle and the perseverance and the resilience of our community every year through Day of Remembrance. We also do local advocacy. So this is the middle picture, and the top there is AAPI Day on the Hill, where we go down to the Capitol and we actually talk to our elected officials to make sure that the voices of our AAPI community are heard and honored by the people that we've elected to serve us. We also attend several like local events. So this is a picture from the Utah Asian Festival from last year, where we were talking about how our organization supports local politics, how we either support or oppose different bills that will impact our communities, and how we fight for the rights of everyone. So we fight for racial justice. We also fight for LGBTQ rights as well. We do this on a national stage as well. So this picture here is actually showing the Leadership Summit. So I was able to participate in this year's Leadership Summit. It's a joint summit with JACL and OCA, which is the Chinese equivalent of JACL. And we hold an annual Leadership Summit where we gather in DC to actually go talk to legislature on Capitol Hill. And again, supporting bills that will protect and preserve our history and honor our communities, and opposing bills that will negatively impact our communities. So one bill that we advocated while we were down there is the Neighbors Not Enemies Act, which is actually repealing the Enemy Aliens Act, Alien Enemies Act, AEA, that justified incarceration, that was used as the blueprints and the justification for forced incarceration of Japanese Americans. So that's an ongoing effort. It's still something that they're talking about in Congress now. And then also on the national level, we have an annual convention every year where all of the different chapters and delegates, and we vote on different issues. And last year, we were actually able to pass a resolution to support Japantown in Salt Lake City. And so what we do on a national level also very much impacts local politics and local level efforts. And so we actually sent a letter signed by all of the different, it was a unanimously supported by our national council. And so we sent a letter to the Salt Lake City City Council members and the mayor to like support the revitalization of Japantown and protecting and preserving the churches that still exist there. Another thing that we do, so our second big thing is cultural preservation. And so we have some like invited speakers and talks where we talk about our Japanese culture. This is on the top left there is a talk that we did about kamon, which is like the Japanese, almost like a family crest. And so the history of it and what it means. We also attend various festivals. So this is Nihon Matsuri and the Japantown Festival. And this is our booth at Living Traditions this year. And we also host we do some community service to really give back to our community. And so at the top right there, this is a performance of koto at our Nikkei Senior Center luncheon that we put on every year. And all 3 chapters take turns hosting luncheons for our seniors, our Japanese seniors, our Nikkei seniors in Salt Lake. And then the bottom right here, you can see one of our most recent Peace Garden cleanups.
And every year in the fall and the spring, we actually gather to preserve and beautify our Japanese garden at the International Peace Garden. So if you've ever been to the International Peace Gardens in Salt Lake, and you've seen the Japanese garden, it's beautiful because we go there every year to maintain it biannually. So those are some of the things that we do. Importantly, some of the festivals like Obon and Nihon Matsuri that we hold are actually on our current Japantown street. And so we still utilize that space, even though most of the space has been taken from our community, we still very much value that street as a cultural hub, as a center for gathering, for community, and for being able to celebrate our culture. And so that street is really, really important to our community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Clarysa to talk a little bit more about the future of that street in Japantown.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Clarysa Park, and I grew up in Layton, Utah, and I spent my adult years in Los Angeles, California. And when I moved back, when I was driving downtown in Salt Lake City, I saw that on 100 South between the Salt Palace and Delta Center, they renamed the street Japantown Street. And I just thought that was so cool to see it, hovering above the street like that. And then as we learned, all that's left of Japantown Street right now are the two religious organizations, the Japanese Church of Christ and the Salt Lake Buddhist Temple. So if you're not a member of any of those organizations, our community doesn't have a place to experience and share our culture outside of, the times where we shut down the street and have our festivals and everything. And so I basically started to hatch an idea of what it would be like to have a cultural center, a cultural hub on Japantown Street. And, especially because I had just moved from a very vibrant cultural place. And so, yeah, I was like, where is the town in Japantown, on Japantown Street? And so, these are some inspirations and ideas, like a space to host workshops, a food alley, a small museum. And yeah, so that's some of the inspiration. And then ironically, as synchronistically, as I was thinking about this plan and starting to talk about it, I started to hear about the Smith Entertainment Group's plans to develop around the Salt Palace and the Delta Center. So they, at that time, this was last year, they were working with the Salt Lake City Council to increase the sales tax in Salt Lake City 0.5% to fund the development of the sports, entertainment, culture, and convention district that they're going to be building for what was the incoming hockey team at the time. And so and here is a picture of what the plan is for the new district. And as you can see, Japantown Street is right in the center of the entire district. And here is also one of the renderings. On the top portion, you see the two buildings in red. Those are the Salt Lake Buddhist Temple and the Japanese Church of Christ. And on the bottom portion, the dark blue, light blue, and green buildings, those are the new developments that they're planning. As you can see, they're high rises, and they have a plan for a hotel, a luxury apartment space. And so, yeah, that's what their plans are so far. And so when I started to, get back involved with the community and start to find out what was going on, I decided that it was important to have a petition for our community to raise awareness and bring visibility to what was going on. And so last year, many of us were out and about in the community gathering signatures at different festivals and events. And we were able to gather over 5,000 signatures to support the Japanese American community being included in the participation agreement between the Smith Entertainment Group and the Salt Lake City Council. And it was awesome engaging with the community. There's so many people in Utah that don't know that Japantown exists. And so it was awesome just to like connect with everyone and like just let them know, you know, what was going on and that the history really. And then so last year, the Japanese American community, we were included in the participation agreement between the city council and the Smith Entertainment Group. And so yeah, this is part of it. So they have agreed to meet with our community a couple times a year to just keep us in the loop and have a seat at the table. And here's some more details from the participation agreement. So they have agreed to activate the north side of 100 South, which is a portion of the Salt Palace where the loading docks are. And as of last month, the Smith Entertainment Group bought that portion of the Salt Palace from the Salt Lake County. So they now own that. And so, yeah, that's now in the works. They have also agreed to create a pedestrian connection between the new district and Japantown Street. And they're going to include Japanese architecture and landscaping and speak to our community regarding the historical markers that they'll be creating. And finally, they will be setting aside up to $5 million from the public benefits account that they're going to create for the redevelopment of Japantown. And yeah, so that was all last year. And it was a really eye-opening experience to see and understand how development works. I saw that developers work with legislators on the legislative cycle and session. They work with city and county council members and stuff. And so because the petition last year was so focused on last legislative session and Senate Bill 272, I thought this year it would be really important to create an open-ended petition. And so yeah, the petition that was just launched at Nihon Matsuri in April, Japan Festival, is really to encourage the Smith Entertainment Group to prioritize Japanese businesses, restaurants, and artist space on any commercial space facing Japantown Street. So to really bring the town back into Japantown, you know, to bring some life and vibrancy back. I've been engaging with a lot of Japanese businesses and they're really excited for this opportunity and possibility. And so, yeah, it's, I feel like an, you know, exciting time there's a lot of potential and opportunity right now and hope for our community to rebuild and bring back just a portion of what once was, you know. And so, yeah, this is the QR code that links to the digital petition. So if you wanted to share that with friends and family and sign it yourself, that'd be awesome. And yeah, that about wraps it up for me. So I just wanted to end on a note of gratitude for Briley and the museum for reaching out and for giving us a space to share our stories during this time for our community. So thank you. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
What's next?
Ooh, that's a good question. Hopefully, so we just heard from the redevelopment agency in Salt Lake City, and they're going to be continuing conversations with our community regarding the beautification of the street. That this was a project that was started years prior to this new development and everything that's going on. So that's yeah.
So for JACL, sorry, my voice is just not coming on. What is JACL doing for the community and what relation of
So we have been present at some of those big meetings. So like there have been some meetings with Mike Munn from SUG. He's like the person who has been face within like interfacing with the community. And so I've served in those on those committees or those meetings to kind of just represent the community and also to coordinate efforts and information sharing. I'm also on Utah Japantown Advocates, UJA, and so that's another group that is really trying to like be a voice, unifying the community and making sure that they're sharing the information and resources and knowledge about Japantown. Alex is also on that with me, so if you want to add anything about Japan?
Yeah, well, I would just say, like, it's kind of, that's what we're trying to like figure out is like, we're all part of, like, I'm in JCL and Utah Japantown Advocates, so it's like, for me, when I work for Japantown stuff, I just feel like I'm working on behalf of JCL, and so I think that's what JCL needs to do a better job of, like, activating more people to just feel that way and like buy in because they know that you're advocating for something. And like, that's something, at least with my generation, we've been trying to figure out is how people to get like young people activated, because I think for like my parents and my grandparents' generation, JCL was like, you would just go to picnic and everyone would be there and like you would just hang out and like that's how you got to know people, and like that's how JCL was grown. Is it was more, it was just a community organization that like you had not had to be, but like if you wanted to be a part of the community and have something because of discrimination and all of that stuff, like it was somewhere you could be yourself and like be a part of the community. And so now, you know, it's good and bad. It's like Japanese Americans have become fairly assimilated into American society. And so that's good because we face less discrimination, but it's harder to keep our culture as vibrant as it once was because, you know, like we could, that's why we're trying to build Japantown up again, is because those were just the chance encounters you have on the street. And I think in general in American society, we need to create more centers of community where you can just walk out and meet people. Because I think for my generation, that doesn't happen as much as it used to for older folks. And I think technology is good in a lot of ways, but it's kind of stripped that away from like general society, and then especially like Japantown, since there's not a lot of physical space left. The temples or the churches are the only things left on that street. That's what I hope, or like, yeah, that's like our goal, is like trying to build that back up in an organic way. So.
And I can speak about Salt Lake a little bit better, but Salt Lake, I'm part of the organizing committee for the AAPI Day on the Hill. And so we do speak directly to our elected officials about supporting and being supportive of Japantown. We also do some of that work on the national level as well. So right when we passed that resolution, it was a resolution from the entire national JACL to support Japantown, and we sent that to the city council members and the mayor. So we do some political stuff that are kind of like behind the scenes, but like we do hope that they're making a big impact in the amount of support that we have for revitalizing Japantown, and any community or organization that wants to more directly support Japantown, like not on the political side, but like grassroots efforts, we like highlight and uplift those efforts. So having the petition at like JACL booths and things like that, we always do that because we want to, again, bring in the community and unify, to have like a unified, strong voice together. So yeah, thank you for your question.
How would the general public be able to show their support? Like we have a lot of friends that aren't even JA, but you know, support the effort. I mean, do you have like a place to donate or what can we?
So for right now, you know, just signing and sharing would be awesome, you know, just showing support and bringing visibility to our community that way. If they could sign and share also, you know, we're at different events and everything, so if they wanted to come out, there's no place to actually donate right now. We're not set up as a 501c3 yet to accept donations, but you know, in the future, you know, hopefully we will be. It's just focusing on the petition and all the grassroots efforts right now, and you know, all of that stuff will come later. But you know, like this JCL, that you know, if anyone wants to donate to them and their causes, and you know, there's you know, different organizations too.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna say that you can donate directly to, well, you can donate to the Utah Japantown Advocates, UJA, which we're all part of, and JACL, the National JACL, and like Salt Lake chapter of National JACL is the fiscal sponsor of UJA. And so if you donate money, we actually are a 501c incorporated organization. And so any money goes directly to UJA, but we're kind of making sure that there's a channel for that. So if you did want to donate to like specifically Japantown advocacy efforts, you can donate to UJA and it would just, yeah.
And then, so yeah, like, I think Discover Japantown, SLC Japantown, they want to be like, I think we want to be able to take donations, and Utah Japantown advocates too. We're trying to incorporate by mid-year, but probably not at this point, but, we'd love to do that, and then like, beyond our donations, I think like, we've been going to a lot of town halls, and it's a little bit frustrating because they're just town halls to kind of just like speak your piece, but the vote, it's not going to affect the vote in the sense that we're not directly voting for it. But I think showing up, and I think in Salt Lake City, there's a lot of, at least from just regular folks, I think there's a lot of resentment and like distrust because of the tax that's going into it, you know. It was 800, or it was like $990 million at the beginning. And then with this latest RDA thing where they included the Ritchie Group and stuff, it was another 300 million from that sales tax. So that's over $1 billion of public funds that are gonna be used for it. And so I think just from when we've gone to town halls, the general public, I think, is very hesitant to accept all these, just because it's a private entity that's gonna come and make a lot of money off of it. And so our stance, at least Utah Japantown advocates, is like, you know, if public funds are gonna be used, then public should have a big say over what's going to happen in that development. And a part of that is revitalizing. For us, it would be revitalizing Japantown Street, especially because we already had, I think Clarysa mentioned, there was like a streetscape project that was already passed 5 or 6 years ago. And so that was kind of put indefinitely on hold. So we'd like to see that happen for sure, just because it's already been passed in the city. Like the city has already passed the same, committing to that. And so we just see that as an opportunity to build, you know, getting more development, like Clarysa was saying, like with Japanese, even if it's not Japanese owned businesses, we would like the community to steward whoever's gonna move in there, you know, just so that it feels organic to our current situation. Cause you know, our community's growing and larger, but it's not big enough to necessarily just have, you know, just Japanese owned businesses. But if we have a say, you know, we can foster, you know, with other Asian American communities or other minority communities, or just like, yeah, just different communities that don't have as much economic power in the city. So, yeah.
I think, do you know what the current population of Jay is at?
I think it's around 18,000 in total. Yeah, and so that's one thing, is like we have grown number wise as a community, but like I said, since there's not a physical space for people to gather, it can feel more disparate than it did when we had less numbers. And so that's what we're trying to harness, you know, the amount of, and there's a lot of JAs that don't have the experience of people who, like other JAs that have been here. So like, you know, first generation people that moved here in the 70s or 80s, or that passed like the incarceration experience. And so trying to connect with younger JAs who don't have that experience and like wonder why JACL even exists, you know, so connecting with those folks.
I had a question on history too.
Oh, okay.
You mentioned that the first came over to go to Panama.
Well, not to Panama. In 1860, there was a delegation from Japan, and so they stopped in San Francisco, but then they didn't visit anywhere else in the Western United States. They went straight to Panama, and then went over the Isthmus of Panama, and then went to New York straight there, and then went back to Japan. So I think it's interesting that the only other place they visited in the West on that delegation trip was in Salt Lake City, and it was only because of that snowstorm. So they weren't even supposed to stop in Utah. They just stopped in Ogden to switch trains, but then they got stuck here, so. So it's interesting, that was the only other place in the West that they had been up to that, so. It's an interesting connection between like Utah and Georgia.
How many of the JAs do you guys feel like you have a connection that South?
I don't know, that's such a hard question to answer, because like, I think Utah is unique. I think in California it was like this, but like, especially in Utah, like the places you gathered were at the Buddhist church and like the Japanese Church of Christ and stuff. Even if you weren't Christian or Buddhist, you know, it's just like if you were JA, those were the places that you would go. And so I think for me, I don't know, like, I don't even know if I could put a number, but like, I would say probably less than half of that number are probably actively engaged in like community events. So yeah, that's another, like, yeah, just driving home, like JCL is really on a national level, they're having struggles maintaining membership, just because, like I said, young people, there's just not as much of a drive to join JCL, or like their parents pay for their membership, but they don't, like,
Continue.
yeah, or they
Yeah,
don't
once
come
they're not
to-
on a family plan.
so they're not visible at events, you know, so like we may have like 1,000 members, but like only 100 or so are actively engaged, so
Yeah.
that's kind of like where it's like, yeah.
And a lot of like, right, the younger generations are like multiracial or biracial. And so making sure that we as an organization, one thing that we want to do is to be inclusive of like the Pan-Asian space, because we don't want to exclude people or make them feel like they're not included in like our population and the population of people that we want to serve and that we want to engage with. So yeah, I think that's one of the things as well, is that like the Japanese American makes some people feel not included, but we really mean to be like a Pan-Asian or like AAPI space.
In anything like this, it's grassroots. Exposure is the point. So related plans and media, media also actually send the message out. So I think that's kind of more support. You need an exposure.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome because we do get contacted by the media regularly for newspaper, radio, and yeah, television also. So the support from the media is definitely there. I think us actively reaching out, we could probably, you know, up that effort, but it's pretty awesome because they do reach out to us and we have had that support, so.
That's kind of why I was asking about donating, so that you could advertise.
I think that's where we want to head,
Yeah.
is like being able to accept donations. We just want to make sure we go through everything the right way. And
Yeah, I
A
think we're-
strong foundation.
Yeah, we want like a unified vision that there's a lot of buy-in from the community
Yeah.
in that one vision. And then we can start this is our vision, like it's coming from the community. But we need to make sure that we're talking to enough people in different spaces in the community to make sure we're not speaking on behalf of people who we haven't spoken to yet. So yeah, I think that's the part that we're in right now, is just like the grassroots organizing and then making sure that we're like interfacing with lots of different spaces to make sure that we have buy-in from lots of different stakeholders.
Well, thank you again. Thank you to our presenters. I hope I speak for everyone. It was really wonderful to hear the Yonsei perspective on what's going on and have it tied into the history. I think this was a really eye-opening presentation, and we're just super glad that you agreed to work with us on this. And yeah, I think you've all seen the exhibit downstairs. Hopefully everyone here has seen the exhibit and everyone on Zoom has seen the exhibit. But if you have a chance, we do talk about the foundation of the JCL, and so just being able to Our next phase as this exhibit closes on June 21st is called Continuing the Journey. We're putting lots of family histories online, a virtual version of the exhibit, and linking to modern community organizations, partnering with the 3 JACL chapters in the state. And so this is just, I think, the perfect way to start our transition into that continuing the journey phase, partnering with the community and all of the amazing work that you do. So thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you for having us. And our contact information is here if anyone wants to contact us or has more questions.
Oh my goodness. Oh my
You're so proud of your mom. You're so proud of your mom.